right, welcome back. We're going to do a little bit more on kind of Lily and I, who we are and where we've come from.
Yeah.
And this time around, we're going to do 10 things we've learned in the last 10 years. Kind of an ode to the passing decade.
We're a little late.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Yeah.
And I know that like when the decade starts is controversial. So
yeah, it started a few weeks ago.
I don't really care.
It started a few weeks ago.
So we've each come up with 5 things, but there are some things that counts for both of us.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So there's 10 items total.
Yep. So do you want to just start?
Yeah, I'll start it. So before this previous decade, I spent a lot of time exploring both myself and the world at large, and I was not afraid to kind of hit the reset button on life. And it was something that a lot of people thought I was doing very without a thought, but I was really just exploring and trying to break away from kind of my moorings, if you will, trying to discover myself and discover what my future was like. And it was a tumultuous time, but it was that by design. It was difficult and stressful and risky, and there were losses by design. So this last decade, risks were taken. I mean, obviously we're here in Peru is a really great example. I moved to Washington, D.C., I moved back, I did some traveling. All of those things entailed risk. I started a new job several times. And I think that the biggest contrast would be that I've kind of learned to stick to my guns. To know when, okay, yeah, there's this transition, there's this change, there's this risk that's being taken. But I'm much, much more intelligent about how I manage that change and that risk. And I've learned to kind of temper my risk-taking and not be so just any risk out there, I'll just take it. Not that was how it was, but I'm certainly more measured in how I would go about taking a risk. And probably one of the biggest things I've learned that I've really applied to the last 10 years is that change is good. Change is really good. Change is a huge opportunity. And I've really kind of latched on to change as a vehicle for, making myself better, making my community better, improving my relationship, and all of that kind of stuff. I think that it's really taught me that change is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. In fact, it's totally illogical. Things are always changing all the time, and so embracing that was a big part of that, and getting better at taking risks, but also tempering my risks just a little bit. Not to say you shouldn't take risks, because with no risk there's no reward. But I think that's
just to jump in. That's something I learned. I have been, and it's a work in progress because it's not great right now. But to be more open to taking risks.
Yep.
For me, one of the big things is like a big picture thing, and it was a better sense of myself. Some of those things include learning to actually like myself. I think everyone goes through a period in their late teens or early adult life where
it's tough to look in the mirror and be like, this is great.
Yeah, and so that was a big thing that I learned, and that in turn improved all of my relationships with people I was dating, with friends in general, with family. Learning that improved many things in my life. Also, along the same thing is, if you've watched our videos for a while, you've probably known that I was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago now. And when you are faced with something like that, you just learn to kind of cut out the bullshit.
Yeah, snaps into perspective a lot of things.
And that's not to say that that is how I live 100% of the time, because that's not true, but it really does help put things in focus. What you like, what you don't like, what you're willing to put up with, what you're not willing to put up with.
Right.
What's important. Just those general overarching things really kind of clicks into place
Right.
sometimes.
Right. And kind of something for me along those same lines, kind of learning about yourself and like big lessons about yourself. I used to just be terrified of things I said or did in the past, and just kind of overworking over and over again. Oh, what could I have done? What should I have done? What could I have said? I don't do that even a fraction as much as I did 10 years ago. So that's something that's really, really changed recently.
Yep.
Another really big moment for me came in 2013. I was in university before that point, both in Washington D.C. and back at UW-Madison, and I had a pretty decent idea of where I was going. I wanted to study politics and policy and systems of government, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to apply that. And when I was in Washington D.C., I was studying Spanish and political science. And I really wanted to bore down on a language, and Spanish made a lot of sense for obvious reasons as an American, and someone who's trying to get involved with Latin America. So in 2013, I had an internship at the U.S. Embassy in Asunción, Paraguay. I had an experience that was unlike anything that I've really been exposed to. I went to a place called the Itaipu Dam, which I think still, possibly overtaken by another, but I think still is the largest electricity producing facility on the planet. It's a huge hydroelectric dam between Paraguay and Brazil. And it is an engineering marvel. And there was a moment where I was standing in one of the generator rooms with this huge 700 megawatt generator with just the power of the water flowing through this generator, and the entire facility is vibrating with all of this potential energy. And I was like, this is it. This is renewable energy and like power generation and doing something about climate change. Like all of those things kind of really came together all of a sudden for me during that tour. And it's not to say that I wasn't interested in renewables before that point. I'm not I'm not a hydrologist. I don't particularly specifically study hydroelectric dams, but just the idea of alternative energy sources that are available, and making policy for that. All of that really snapped into focus when I was in Paraguay, and ever since then I've been essentially, from a professional level, focused on renewable energy and climate change mitigation ever since.
And someday we will get Clint to make a video about what he does for work here in Peru.
Yeah.
Someday.
This year.
Hopefully. So another thing that I learned that turns out I actually really liked was to live on my own. Before that, I had, I grew up obviously living with my family. I had siblings. And then when I moved out as an adult, I was living, I had roommates. I had roommates, or I was living with a boyfriend, or something. I always had someone in my house, someone that you could rely on, share tasks with. It's a big thing. Even if it's just a roommate, you should be sharing tasks. But I learned to live on my own. I lived alone for the first time in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 8?
Somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. And I really liked it. I learned to do things on my own. I learned to take care of myself, and to be more independent. And you just learn a lot of things living on your own, including opening a bottle of wine without a wine opener. So you learn a lot. And it turns out I really liked living alone. And I think that also helped me embrace being more of an introvert, whereas before I was an introvert trying to be an extrovert. And so living on my own really helped me embrace that. And I think that also a little bit contributed to like my sense of self and becoming happier and things like that.
Another one is directly related to my wedding vows. And I think I have made considerable progress in the last 10 years, and that is to be more patient. If you know me from years back, you'll know this is true, and even more recently, obviously, you still see it. It's not it's still a work in progress, but I've learned a lot about what it means to kind of not react immediately. I'm still very reactionary, and it's something I'm working on. But I think that especially this this move to Peru has by its very nature and by necessity, like if you can't manage it, you're not going to make it, is be more patient. Everything takes time, more time than it should, maybe, but more time certainly. And I just used to I would stress out, just freak out, super stressed, can't sleep, can't think about anything else when things are going wrong or when there's something kind of in progress that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And
when something's not efficient.
Right, something's not efficient, or I made a wrong turn and I gotta turn around, I gotta backtrack, or and that both physically when you're driving and then kind of metaphorically when you're kind of doing things in life. And to be honest, this is maybe something we'll do on a video on at some other time, but in the last year I've kind of picked up a group meditation process.
We host a sangha here at our house, most times at our house, and we've done a few videos about it. I'll link some down below.
And I don't know, I can't say if it's particularly related to that, but I've had some bumps in the road within the last few months that would have sent me to the moon 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I'm actually surprisingly,
and in some cases, Clint's been more calm about those bumps than I have,
right,
which is normally not
the case
thing.
usually.
Yeah.
So I think I've made a lot of progress on this, especially recently within the last few years. But it's been a process that's been ongoing ever since I was like a young adult, and it's something I think I've seen a big difference in myself. But that is to say, knowing that, seeing how far I've come, I still know that I have a long ways to go.
One of the things I learned in this past 10 years, and I don't even remember what year it was, I started doing yoga. Perhaps this is along the lines of meditation because it's like a moving meditation, but I really started learning it and I really like it. And it's something, sometimes, I'll have points in life where things get busy, and it's been one of those busy periods recently where I don't do it for a month. But then as soon as I get back into it, it's amazing. And it's just one of those things that I've really learned to enjoy. And even though I can't maybe fit it in all the time when I would like to, it's one of those things that I keep coming back to. It just makes a huge difference in my life. So I'm really happy that I took the chance on going to classes and to continue doing them.
Yeah. This one's kind of fun. This is something for my parents to really acknowledge. Ever since I was a kid, I think, certainly my young adulthood, very outspoken, very willing to share my opinion, right or wrong. And my opinions have changed over the years, but the point is I would never really... I never really did a good job of picking my battles. Just everything was a battle, and I took everything head on, and I justified that by saying, it's not right for good people to sit by and let things happen, no matter how small. You nip that thing in the bud. And that might be true for some things, but when it's constant and you're kind of known for that, and people are kind of expecting you to behave that way, I can imagine, obviously, get very old. And so, honestly, this is probably something that's happened that's really changed in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I'd say, ever since I started working at the state of Wisconsin, and then, after graduation, and then certainly here in Peru. There are things that I have learned I'm much better off not to say. And again, this is a lesson I learned way back. I was exposed to this lesson way back, even when I traveled outside the United States for the first time to Africa. My guide there, he had a way about him that was so obvious to me that it was, don't always speak, don't always, jump in. Sometimes no words are more powerful than all the words in the world, or the most eloquently spoken thing. So, I'm not religious. Peru is a very religious country. It may be damaging me just saying this here, to some degree, but I am not religious at all, and that could have social implications in a place like this. And so I'm very, very aware of that. Whereas before, living in Madison, Wisconsin, where there's a very vibrant non-religious community, it's a totally different story to confront people and to talk about it openly and to be very aggressive. But it's not to say that you shouldn't, fight for your convictions and what you believe is right, but to be mindful of how people are going to perceive you because of the things you say. Same thing goes obviously for politics. Living in Madison, again, it was a more or less very homogenous community politically. That's not that's a generalization, but it was not controversial to have certain opinions. But this is a totally different universe we're living in down here in Peru. Particularly this part of Peru.
And even, some of our family don't have the same ideals or religion or set of politics.
That's a great point. So. There's people in our family who we see posts of on Facebook or other social media. And in years past, I would be very quick to say something, anything, just like, oh, I don't agree, or you're full of shit, or this is the reason why you're wrong. And now I actually see those things, and I'm the least likely to react to those posts. Maybe that's an artifact of becoming more mature, or maybe that's an artifact of seeing how relationships have become strained because of being opinionated. I think it's probably all of the above, perhaps. But I'd say last 5 years especially, but certainly learned it over the last 10 years, is it's not always the time to lay down the battle lines.
And you can tell that Clint and I perhaps rub off on each other from the things we've said that are opposite, but I in turn have learned to be more outspoken, probably within the last 5 years. I typically keep to myself a lot, don't voice my opinions for whatever reason. But I have learned to talk more, to voice my opinions more.
Certainly.
It's still uncomfortable for me a lot of times, and I think even just making these videos has been helpful because we're obviously, there's two of us, but we're obviously talking to a larger whole.
Right, to you guys.
And it's a bit difficult, but I have definitely become more outspoken and able to speak more about things that I want to, or...
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
One of the things that I have also learned this past 10 years is what I wanted in a partner. I think all of these things maybe all go together because, having a sense of self obviously contributes to knowing what you want. But... I had not a very good relationship. Some of that was because I didn't know myself and I wasn't happy with myself. And then once I learned to be happier with myself, I went through a phase where I thought that I shouldn't have such strict ideas about what I wanted in a partner, so I would date people that I shouldn't have probably dated just because I was like, oh, well, X, Y, and Z isn't that big of a deal. I should just give them a chance,
Except it's catastrophic.
Yeah, because you're already going in with a bad... Whatever, it doesn't matter. So, I learned that, maybe don't judge a book by its cover,
sure.
But I definitely learned what I wanted in a partner. Maybe Clint did too.
Certainly. Absolutely. So another thing that's definitely really important in the last 10 years, and it's kind of been, from my perspective, learned both ways, is the importance of community. It's one of the reasons we talked about in our previous videos about why we moved down here, is we want to kind of find a sense of community, belonging to a group, being involved with the community. That isn't to say we didn't have any of those things in Madison. We certainly did.
Yeah, we certainly had good friends and stuff.
Sure, and our family was close.
Yeah, obviously.
But this is different. So You know, when I was at university, I was a fair number of years older than the average students, and that was difficult to kind of connect with people. And then when I was working at my first job out of university, there was a separation between myself and my colleagues. Not to say it was significant or that it was bad or negative or anything like that, but it was just different. And there wasn't a sense of connection. There wasn't a sense of like, you know, being there for each other at all times. Whereas down here, and again, this is something we came down here for, not only the expat community, which, you know, are people who maybe are from the same general place that we are, you know, i.e. the United States.
And perhaps more like-minded.
Right. Like, it's all a self-selecting group, for the most part. You know, we're all kind of, most of us are seasoned travelers. You know, Peru is not the first place we arrived to, you know, traveling. We've seen things, we've been exposed to other cultures and other languages and other, you know, yada, yada, yada. And so it takes a certain kind of people to do those things, and I think that we've really tapped into that community here. And that, honestly, that process is probably only just beginning. We're meeting new people all the time, and that's really exciting. But the friends that I have here, and then, again, it's not to diminish what we had in the United States, but the friends that we have here, there's a sense of connection and community and love and support that is certainly unique, we'll say, from our previous experience when we were living in the United States. And it's really refreshing, and I love participating in it, and I love the people that we have in our circle down here. And that circle is constantly expanding, and that's not to talk exclusively about the expat community. There are lots of local friends that we've made from Arequipa who are indispensable, and we love being part of their lives so much. And it's nothing that we could have gotten in Wisconsin, to be perfectly frank.
And I'm just going to interject quick, because this was something that I learned as well, because I just a few minutes ago in the same video, I said that I learned to be happy being alone, learned to be happy being an introvert, learned to be happy living on my own, and I liked all those things. And so for some time I thought that I didn't really need a community or need that group. But after finding it, I really, it is indispensable.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I don't want my own space or whatever, because I still very much need those things. But I find myself like having housemates, and having people over more often than I normally would have in Wisconsin. So that has been a big discovery for me as well.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing that we have on our list is both of us, but
I like this one.
Mostly me.
Yeah.
I have now been a vegetarian for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And so it's been a long ride, and it's been a huge learning experience,
but it's been a process of change as well.
Right. And Clint and I are both eating plant-based diets for different and the same reasons.
Right.
So learning those reasons and why we feel passionate about such a thing, and learning more about it, learning how to have balanced meals, and like learning to cook is a big thing for you.
It's a huge deal for me.
Because,
the last 10 years in just cooking has been a revolution in my life.
Right. Because, I mean, as a vegetarian, I mean, it's more accessible in the States, but like you have to cook.
Sure.
You have to. If you want to have a balanced meal and get all the nutrition you need, you have to cook. And so all those things combined has been really great.
Yeah.
I know everyone's different, and I know that being vegetarian or vegan isn't for everyone,
right.
but me personally, my body feels better on a plant-based diet, and I'm just super happy that I read Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan and changed my view and developed into this type of lifestyle.
Yeah,
so.
And as a kid, you know, and this is not a knock to mom and dad, they did a great job, but it was meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's...
same here.
Right.
That's Wisconsin. I feel
right.
It's pretty...
It's not abnormal, and, you know, there was a point in my life, again, in the last 10 years, 2010 is the time that this happened. You know, I really began to examine, you know, what I'm eating, why, Where does it come from? All these kind of things, and that ties into what we were talking about earlier. You know, she's talking about it a lot from a personal health and I think an animal welfare standpoint. And I really was very interested in the energy standpoint and its effect on the environment, and that remains the majority of the reason why I don't consume a lot of meat. And again, the whole idea here is this process of development and this vegetarian lifestyle. And I've gone from, gosh, every meal
Yeah.
to
and not only every meal, but like a lot of meat
right
in every
that meal, right? Like, to maybe once or twice a month. In fact, I don't even remember the last time I ate meat. And it's not something I need. It's not something not something I necessarily crave anymore. But I feel really great about reducing my environmental impact in that regard. And so, kind of learning to cook, adopting a vegetarian lifestyle, has helped me in my kind of practice what I preach professionally and personally. And it feels really great. And we've learned so much from becoming vegetarian. In my case, you might be able to say flexitarian, if you will, because every once in a while I'll eat meat, kind of sort of when I have no choice. But
there's always a choice.
There's always yeah. So it's not when you're dying of hunger every 10 seconds. But it's been a great period actually the last 10 years looking at how our diets have changed and our interaction with our food. It's completely different than just 10 years ago. It's pretty wild actually.
Yeah, and it's another, like, along the same lines, and I don't want to harp about it too much, but coming to Peru has really been a big change in our vegetarian lifestyle. Right. Because in the United States, I was a vegetarian, you were mostly vegetarian, but we were able to buy things like vegetable broth. Right. And frozen vegetables, all these things that are so convenient in the United States, fake meat, right. Protein. Right. But we make our own vegetable broth because you can't find it in the stores here. Right. Everything is fresh. Yep. Fresh veggies, fresh fruit.
Which is great.
We make our own meat protein. Yep. Like, it's just been such a great thing to learn, and I'm so happy to have learned it, and I don't think I would have if we still lived in the United States, because it's so available that it's easy. Right. But I'm super happy to have learned these things that we can do on our own. Yep. So those are 10 large, expanded points that we have learned in the last decade. Yeah.
I'd love to hear your guys. Please. What things have you learned, or what's the big lessons that you've learned in your recent life in the last 10 years? Yeah. Put them in the comments down below. Yeah. This is a video I really like watching on YouTube, so let us know if you have any favorite videos. Link them down below. Let us know what you have learned. We want to know. Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up, and we'll see you in the next video.